All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm Rebecca Martin. I am from KingstonCitizens.org, and it's a real pleasure for me to host for KingstonCitizens.org to host Jess Conard. Jess and I were colleagues at Beyond Plastics. I'm so happy to have met her um, and currently, she is the founder and executive director of Rail Watch. And when I learned that, I was just thrilled because I don't think there's anything like it um, in the United States that I'm aware of. And Jess, you can you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm curious to get to your presentation. Um, so a little bit about Jess. Jess is a community leader directly impacted by the East Palestine train derailment that I know
Mm,
you all are familiar
mhm.
with. Um, and so Jess turned this firsthand experience into what is a national movement for rail safety. Jess partners with rail safety groups and enthusiasts who have spent years in the trenches of rail safety and rail safety advocacy and built the foundations of this work. Jess aims to complement and collaborate to build community power that will keep our trains on the tracks, our economy strong, and our communities safe. So, Jess, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm going to just turn it right over to you.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Rebecca. It's such a pleasure to know you. You're such a lovely person and so talented. It's great to be here with you. I'm really excited for this small group. I find it to be an easier space to ask questions and to really get into discussion. So, thank you so much for spending your evening. Please settle in, relax, grab a cup of tea or wine if you're feeling like you need to unwind a little bit more. And yeah, I'll talk for a little bit about train derailments, about my community, and then I'll be talking a little bit about Kingston. You all are the experts of Kingston, and I want to empower you in that. And I'm just here to present a few things that I know. And then what I'd really like to do with you is offer opportunities to discuss your personal concerns with rail safety, or just things that you might have questions about in your own community. So, all right, let's get going. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So, I am formerly a medical speech language pathologist from East Palestine, Ohio. I am currently the founder and executive director of RailWalk. As Rebecca mentioned, sorry if you can hear my dog. And I'm also the senior fellow at Holt Farm Network. This is not a endorsement for the Democratic Party. This is a picture of myself and acting President Biden. Um, and it's just proof of a really great group project. I'm paused to let my dog out. I'm so sorry. Just give me 1 second. Okay, back at it. You can go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is the Norfolk Southern derailment and chemical disaster that occurred in my community of East Palestine, Ohio in February of 2023. I'm here today with a mission to transform my personal tragedy into a national movement for rail safety and accountability. A lot of people think that there really isn't much that you can do about rail safety locally because a lot of the regulations are at the federal level. But from what I've learned over the last 3 years by studying these events, that led to the derailment in my community. I've come to realize that that's not completely true and that there are things that we can do at all levels of government and within our communities to make rail safe for us so that you don't have something like this that happens in your community. Next slide, please. So RailWatch is a fiscally sponsored grassroots organization. I do work both in the United States and Canada with communities, with folks who have rail safety concerns, and I work with them to turn those into actionable takeaways in order to prevent train derailment disasters. This organization was absolutely born from the East Palestine train derailment. I never ever thought that I would know this much about trains or derailments or be on this webinar, but I am happy to take that expertise that I've learned and support your community today. Next slide. All right, chew on this. So in the first 2 months after launching RailWatch, I worked in 19 communities, 11 states, and Canada. I think that that's relevant to point out because there is such a need for folks to be paying attention to rail safety, to be able to navigate their concerns. Next slide, please. So today we're going to talk a little bit about RailWatch and get into the nitty-gritty of what I do, and then we'll talk a little bit about Kingston and what you can do. Next slide, please. So the cornerstone of RailWatch is really about building community power. And the way that I do this is through offering a community mapping tool. So this is a mapping tool that outlines any concerns that you have. So it would be done after we would meet or you would meet a member of the RailWatch team. And then we would outline who in your community or maybe outside of your community can help with those concerns. We'll outline all of the community assets and the things that could be at risk. And then I work to develop a campaign plan for 1 year. And that is all dependent on what the concerns are. So there could be a concern about a type of material that's on the train running through the town, or it also could be that you're concerned about blocked crossings. There's all sorts of issues, but whatever it is, the community mapping tool is to support that community member. Next slide, please. RailWatch is primed for activating in areas of policy. So I do work directly with decision makers. I do have a small portion of RailWatch that does some lobbying to educate about policy solutions at all different levels of government. Primarily, so being a 501, a fiscally sponsored organization under a 501c3, lobbying is kind of lower on the totem pole. The goal is really to educate on the opportunities that exist within a community based on the community concerns. Next slide, please. And then third is I work really hard on this because I'm not the best at the research portion of it, but I am a good writer. So we do a lot. I work with a lot of scientists. I work with unions. I work with folks who really understand the technical aspects of rail and statistical analysis. And we work together to create documents. I submit comments to federal agencies and do op-eds. And then I also have a report coming down the pipeline on a few economic concerns in the rail safety space. Next slide, please. All right, so let's dive into Kingston a little bit. Thank you for listening about RailWatch. I'm really excited about it. I did drop a link to the RailWatch website if you wanted to check that out later. And I'm happy to connect with you about a community mapping tool if you do have a concern specifically. So Kingston actually has a really rich industrial and rail network. High volume with CSX freight corridor moving through the neighborhood and of course the waterfront district. So pretty active rail traffic. I'm sure that you don't need me to tell you that, but just so that we're on the same page, those increased the increased rail activity does obviously increase the potential of a hazardous accident. So you guys have all seen those big black tank cars moving through your community. I'm sure those are not the only threats. There are also other types of cars that move through the community that carry waste from all sorts of petrochemical and landfill activities. Um, but anyways, I think primarily what I've identified in your community, and actually, I want to take a moment if you want to come off mute if you're from Kingston. The things that I have identified in your community that might create a challenge for rail safety are things like blocked crossings, noise levels, and then evacuation plans should there be a hazardous derailment. But I would love for you if you have like one or two things that you're concerned about, and then we'll dive into something else.
I I have a concern. It's Amy. Um, and I'm here with several of my neighbors and my husband as well. Um, we live right under the trestle. Our property literally abuts the trestle, and we see rot, rust out in parts of the trestle. I don't know how vital they are, but it's a little disconcerting because the trains go by constantly.
It's worse than that. Actually, the bolts that connected to the foundation are disintegrated.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
There you go. Yeah. And besides the noise, the honking, we
Right.
could get into that as well. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Have you told anybody about your concerns?
No, well, we just moved in and we're all getting to know each other, which is delightful, but we haven't sort of organized. Have you ever reported the noise to anyone?
No, but I've been asking people that I know that work with the mayor. People are aware that the honking, the noise is a problem, and you've been here longer.
Yeah, so I've been here since 2008. As far as the noise goes, there is actually was just an article about this topic about a month ago or so in the paper. And the challenge with the noise is that, first of all, the railway it's the federal government that has to do with the railways. And they've determined, whenever anybody's asked about it, they've determined that what the trains are doing is within the appropriate parameters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it came up actually in the town of Ulster recently. That was a topic. Because people who had lived there near the trains for a long time said it seemed like it was getting worse to them. CSX reports that it's not, and so far the people who have been studying it, wherever they are, say that they have not noted a change. One of my concerns, I mean, it is noisy. I'm used to the noise, so, but obviously I've lived here for a long time, and that doesn't mean that the noise is okay. It just means that I'm used to it. And it does seem like it really depends on who's driving the train, how long the horn is sound.
If it sounds at all.
Right.
There's
you know
no
what I mean?
regulation on that in terms of what.
And the CSX says that they have to do it in certain areas because there are homeless encampments, and there are
We have a tunnel.
there are animals and whatever, but there's got to be some middle ground there. As far as our street goes, evacuation would be a huge concern.
Yeah.
Huge concern.
We live on a dead-end street.
It's not only a dead-end street, it's a dead-end street
On a cliff.
that's on a cliff.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So if they fell on the road, we would be trapped.
And they would fall in our yard.
Anyway,
Yeah,
bolt-
Jess, I can send you a photograph of the area. It's an interesting area where they are.
So thank you for all of that. I want to hear from other folks too, but I want to address this a couple things. The first line of defense is generally your municipality, just notifying them of your concerns and or the commission, the county, there's a county commission generally that would do rail inspections alongside the rail company. If for some reason that's not happening, then the commission would then call the FRA, which is the Federal Railroad Administration, and they usually take like 100 years to come out, but they do have to come out if there is a complaint. You can make a complaint yourself on the FRA alleged violation website. Let me get that up. Have you looked into that at all, or did you know about that?
No.
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 Yeah. But I would say the first line of defense is to just let your municipality know, and take it from there. But there's generally a process. I'm gonna drop the link to it's called an alleged violation reporting form. Um, and you didn't mention blocked crossings, but there is a blocked crossings reporting form as well. Um,
Rebecca, can
Yeah.
reconnoiter after this too, right? And
I'm gonna follow up with a video and all of the resources that Jess is sharing.
okay. Okay, great.
You don't have to worry about, I mean, if you can grab it, it's great, but you'll get it as a follow-up.
Easier and a follow-up, I think. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are also little blue signs that are, it's called the emergency notification system. If you click on the link that I just shared for the blocked crossing notice or incident reporter, you can see an example of the little blue sign. And those are generally what you would call for an emergency. But I would say if the structure is not connected to the foundation and there's a big heavy train going across it, that feels more emergent to me. You are not going to be tying up a line. Um, the trains have their own police. Railroads have their own police, which a lot of folks don't realize. And obviously, if there is a true emergency in your community, please use your emergency lines, 911 if you have it. But this is an option for you as well. On the little blue signs, however, there's usually a crossing code or a crossing number, and so that tells the dispatcher exactly where that is, versus trying to describe it. So these are generally found at crossings, but you could, say that, oh, it's near this crossing or a mile from that crossing.
We don't have even, I've never seen
Seen it.
hide nor hair of a blue sign.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's in Port Ewan or actually in Kingston, because when it crosses the creek,
Right, because
It
it's not,
crosses-
it's crossing above the street, it's not crossing
At
on
the
the
street
street.
level and
Right.
going into a tunnel in the
Yeah, it's
mountain.
80 feet in the air.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Jenny.
Thank you, Jess. I have very simple questions. There's something very disturbing about the anonymity of CSX, and I wonder what it stands for. And do we know who runs it, and how do they relate to the FRA? There's something so, whatever the word is, I don't know what it is, but just unaccountable here. And I don't know what a blocked crossing is.
Okay. So CSX, you got me on what does it stand for? I don't know that one, but I do know that it is one of the six Class 1 railroads. So
One of
CSX
the what? Sorry, one of the six.
Class 1 major
Class
railroad.
one. I see. Okay.
So there's four major railroads that primarily run in the United States. Those are Class 1 railroads. You have Norfolk Southern, Union Pacific, oh, you're really challenging me right now. CSX, and there's one more that I can't think of. And then you have the two Canadian rail lines.
Uh-huh.
But those six they're the class one operators, so they're the bigger ones. And then you have a lot of short lines that there's dozens of them. And so those would be the ones that generally connect within communities. What was your other question?
What's a blocked crossing?
Yeah, so when you have a train that goes over a road or a highway that is stopped at the crossing, that's not moving, then that train is blocking the crossing where
Oh,
pedestrians or cars would be. Does
Uh,
that?
and so so whatever reason the train comes to a standstill and it's part of it is on blocking the road. I see. Okay, so that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna also drop in here the chat, the blocked crossing statistics, which New York isn't too bad. I did look up, there were, I think, 3 from Ulster County in the last 12 months, so that's pretty good. Um,
Okay.
but what you can do on this site that I dropped in there is if you scroll down to the bottom, you can filter it by city, state, county, and also there are comments that folks will leave as to why they reported the blocked crossings. And some of them are, pedestrians are climbing on or over or through the train cars. That
Mm.
first responders were observed being unable to cross the tracks.
Mhm.
A lot of really significant, dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And yet, in the past 12 months, there have been nearly 30,000 blocked crossing reports or incidents on this site. So it's roughly, what, 100 per day, I think, is what I counted, between 90 and 100 per day in the United States. That feels like a lot. And unfortunately, the local and state and county legislation really can't do anything about the blocked crossing piece. And this is in the federal legislation in the Interstate Commerce ICCTA, which is an act out of 1995 that pretty much says anything that has to do with train operations would be under federal jurisdiction. Train operations is pretty vague.
Yeah.
I want to get into that a little bit more later. Let me get through these next couple slides.
Okay, I'd like to go back. I have a question. It's Karen,
Hey, Karen.
related to what Jenny said as well.
Okay.
The, the acronym for CSX, okay, and the actual companies, we don't know. Like when you make a complaint to the federal government, and I'd love to know who owns a CSX. Who are the owners?
Right.
It's all
It's
on the internet.
corporate.
It's
Yeah.
all what? I'm sorry. It's all.
It's all on the internet. You can find a
Oh,
Wikipedia.
okay.
It's all
Okay.
there.
What
I'm
do-
reading all about
What
it.
do the letters stand for?
Jesse and Seaboard is C and S, and X is the merger of those two things. So it's Chessie and Seaboard, whoever
Okay.
they
Thank you. Thank you.
complicated long entry in Wikipedia.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that help there.
I just wanted to, this is Tanya Garment. I just wanted to jump in with one thing I hope to learn a little bit about is connectivity for pedestrians and the blockage of that. In Ulster County, we've got the rail crossing study that's focusing on the safety aspects and there's a lot of talk of closing off the intersections where pedestrians have crossed so that they can't. And then there's the connectivity, the loss of connectivity as a result for kids trying to access the high school. It has been addressed in Ulster County, trying to find. They put out an RFP, and when I find it, I'll put it in the chat to study and try to get a bridge over the crossing by behind the YMCA. So it's like crossing from one side of the tracks over to the YMCA, and then you can make your way towards the school. A lot of kids were doing that, and they kept breaking the fence open. So because of the pushback and the cutting of the fence, they are addressing that, but they're really not. There's no addressing loss of connectivity other than that one spot. So, and I worry about that yeah, that there's no requirement for for the study of where we really need some overpasses.
I
Thanks.
talked a little bit about that study, Tanya. So thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Jess, could I just ask one more question? Do you have statistics on the fatalities in Ulster County, and particularly Kingston, in the past year or two, or however? Actual
So,
deaths?
so I don't have that on hand, but that is publicly available data that anybody can access.
Okay.
I have fatalities from CSX, but not necessarily through or just exclusively for Kingston. Let me think for 1 second of the document that I want to look at. I can give you a quick number for CSX.
Oh, well,
Um,
I'm based out of Florida.
in in 2025, just CSX had 248 train accidents or incidents. That's not fatalities. Fatalities are, let's see, not super high, which is good.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Um,
you.
there's this, I have, sorry, I'm working on a report, so I'm trying to pull some data that I already have. So I would say generally the average number of fatalities on the class one major railroads are between 1 and 5 um, a year. So it's not that high. That doesn't mean that that's not like there's, it's important to consider. Um, the way that the FRA looks at the data is fatalities and casualties are not the same. So it's a little bit difficult to extract. Um, but anyways, I do have a report coming out on that in the next coming months. So I'd be happy to share that with Rebecca to get that over to you. All right, let's go ahead and move through the slides a little bit here. So in Kingston, obviously you do have some hazardous materials transport, specifically traveling on that river line pretty routinely. You have some pressurized gases, some volatile fuels, and different corrosive substances. Um, because the tracks directly parallel the Hudson River, any structural failure or puncture risk, which is what happened in East Palestine. The DOT 111 car was punctured. The DOT 111 cars specifically are problematic and puncture at speeds of 15 miles per hour, which is not very fast. So it's more likely that those trains are traveling more than 15 miles per hour. So I know right now the federal government is working on legislation to have a timeline to phase out the DOT 111 rail cars. Unfortunately, that has been a recommendation from the National Transportation Safety Board for many years and has gone ignored. But I do think that there is, certainly opportunities for communities to push that needle a little bit. In addition, there are, I would say, I'm trying to think, does Kingston have a rail safety group or any like active community groups that discuss rail safety or even like emergency planning?
There's Ulster County has a board and commission. I guess all counties in New York have them. Ulster County Traffic Safety Board, and then there's a group called Safe Pass Ulster that talks about transportation safety, which is just um, a grassroots group.
Okay,
I,
that's good.
but you're referring to, do we have anything like that in the city of Kingston?
Yeah, that was my question, but it's good to have a grassroots group too.
Suzanne, do you have any information that you could share on that? Do we have that?
I don't know of any that the city has specifically. I know that they would work with the county agency and the emergency management team there on issues. But the city doesn't have anything specifically set up to discuss like rail traffic?
So, emergency planning should include trains, specifically the hazardous materials that are moving through the community and what to do in the event of an emergency anywhere along the rail line. Communities are entitled to those and entitled to those being updated every 10 years. That is by law. So I would certainly encourage that. And there are different companies that will come in and do risk assessments. Like, for example, if one of these big trains that are quite long coming through that corridor, if one of them derails, in like near the river or near community assets or like a school or a hospital, what that evacuation would look like. It's really sometimes difficult to gain access to what is traveling on the trains. First responders can get an app called Ask Rail, which is they're working on putting that into federal legislation as well. But you can also be a manifest requester, which is somebody that can request the manifest or have access to it digitally. First responders should always have access. The reason that it's not publicly available, at least the answer that I keep getting, is because it's a matter of homeland security. We don't necessarily want everyone in the world to know what is traveling on the trains because then it becomes a target. Um, I feel like it already is a target, but I guess I understand that to a degree. In East Palestine, we did not have the manifest. I spoke recently, I got to meet the gentleman who brought my community the manifest. And it was kind of an emotional moment of I was just grateful that he took the time to do that. He was someone from Norfolk Southern. It was not his job to do that. He was in a community in Pennsylvania, and he took it upon himself to make sure that our community had the manifest. And when he got there, you know, they were like, oh, thanks. And it was, like 2 o'clock in the morning. So it was unfortunate that we didn't have access to that manifest and we didn't know what we were fighting, that there were tank cars exploding near homes. And that's really not how it should be. So you can become a manifest requester or your
Can I ask a quick
first
question?
responder. Yes.
Hi, my name is Will Nixon. The black car on your slide here, these cars, is there any way to know what's on those cars from all of, the codes and numbers? And I'm always curious, is it oil? I don't know what's in them. Can we know what's in them?
Um, yes, they are coded on the side. The chemicals themselves or the class of chemicals does have a placard.
Okay.
In the event of a derailment, those placards melt,
Oh,
which is really ineffective. But yeah, I mean, I think as a community member, if you really wanted to be vigilant, you could set up a system, a camera that would capture those placards, and you could assess them using some of the technologies that we have today to identify what is on the rail cars. Um, the problem is that they're not necessarily in a standardized place. They have to be generally in a certain area. Certain cars have to have them on different sides. Sometimes the cars are empty, so that's also sometimes difficult to identify. But yes, they do have placards. Most folks don't know how to read them. There was I did a rail watch service that talked a little bit about this. Let me see if I can bring that up.
Jess, while you're doing that, um, it's great that we have our city planner here just to be able to confirm any information to make sure it's accurate. So when we look at our own emergency management plans, what I see on our website is a disaster preparedness and recovery page, and on it is everything under the sun, but I don't see anything about the railroad. So, Suzanne, is there a different place for us to be looking to see what the city of Kingston has done in the way of studies or guidance emergency management plans so we can have a sense of where what we're to do, where the city is, what additional work might there be?
I am not aware. I can look it up, but the fire department may have something on their site as first responders. That would be the first place I would ask. I'd ask the chief. Um, Other than that, I don't believe there's anything under engineering or public works in this regard.
Okay. I
What
wonder,
about the sheriff's office as a county?
or the
Um,
Mhm. But if we do have that, we would definitely want it reflected somewhere on our city site. So that's a good gap. That's a good thing to recognize. We have a potential gap there and work to be done to anyway, I don't want to derail your presentation. I'm going to pause and let you go.
No, these are great conversations, and I'm glad to help jumpstart them. Let's go ahead to the next slide. This is pulled from the blocked crossings report that Rebecca, you had sent from 2006, which is a little bit old now. I think that's the one that you referred to earlier. I'm curious what you guys think about these recommendations. So these are the crossing points. So Flatbush, Broadway Crossing, Kingston Point, and then Waterfront Strand. And then the pedestrian volume is all listed there, as well as the identified hazard or the risk. So school zone, lots of vehicles, recreational park access, which again, you sort of mentioned all this. And then I listed the recommendations that were on this report. And I'm curious if this infuriates you as much as it infuriates me, because these are all things that feel more burdensome to the community and less um, it's less of a resolution. I think that, like I said, according to the FRA data, there's roughly 100 reports of blocked crossings in the US every single day, and they are almost exclusively freight lines. So first responders the event of an emergency, people crossing the tracks through the train, like going actually through the stopped train, being late for any life-saving medical appointments, things like dialysis that people need every single day, late to work, late to any sort of paid event like a concert or a venue. Over the last decade, Class 1 railroads, including CSX, have increasingly adopted something called precision scheduled railroading. And one of the main outcomes of precision scheduled railroading is the assembly of those extremely long trains. So they're regularly now between 1 and 2 miles in length and up to 3 miles in length. So when a 2 mile train is forced to stop or to slow down, that can simultaneously block multiple public road crossings. And that's what we're starting to see is it's not just one crossing and oh, you can go down the road and, not be blocked at the other crossing. It's all of them if there are, in succession. And I think it was it was in 2003. There was a pretty popular situation in Kingston where a crew member stopped a train to get donuts. Does anybody remember this? Does
I think
anybody?
we've all heard it. Yeah, but I don't know where the source originally was from.
Yeah, so basically it identifies that there is a not so nice relationship between the federal regulation and the local legislation because locally the municipality can do nothing about a blocked crossing. And I don't know if this employee was disgruntled or what the situation was. It is not normal for them to stop their train to get coffee or donuts, but that is what happened in this situation. And as I understand, there was an emergent situation that was not able to be carried through in a prompt manner, as most emergencies are. So there is a lot of tension, I think, when local, like municipalities, create laws that are federally preempted. I'll talk a little bit about why we should still do that later. But the FRA, the Federal Rail Administration, is who investigates train safety and stuff like this, the blocked crossings, and basically no laws were broken. So I think that it's absurd that they have that much power, that in the name of the economy, we can have a blocked crossing versus getting a child or another any human to the hospital on time. But back to the primary recommendations, I mean, these are generally good recommendations, but they infuriate me because I don't think that they're going to solve the problem. I think the problem is reduce the length of trains and quit blocking the crossings. No park zones. I think that the federal government has a responsibility here for public interest and being able to shift that narrative from we need to have a strong economy and this is how we do it to rail. The way the rail system is run currently is not in the public interest. Precision scheduled railroading just completely annihilated that. And it's with communities like Kingston, like Pittsburgh, like Houston, who I've been working with, who really, if we start pushing in the right direction together, the federal government is going to respond. And that's what we're seeing at the federal level right now. In the infrastructure package. So every year, or every 5 years, the Surface Transportation Board, which is responsible for mostly budgeting and economy in terms of rail, but also highway and anything that's on the ground. They're passing a budget bill, and there are provisions of the Railway Safety Act and other rail safety legislation that has been put into this budget bill, which is great because now we have funding to put more hot box or defect detectors so that when the train wheels are on fire, like what happened in East Palestine, we'll have ample notification of that instead of just waiting for the train to derail. Um, but there are little pieces of legislation that got put into this same bill about blocked crossings as well. So it is a federal responsibility, and community pressure, I think, is how we get that changed. I see a hand raised. It says Peter.
Yeah, it's yes, it's Amy, but yeah, I'm just thinking, Rebecca, like we have a really good relationship with Pat Ryan, who's our congressman, and then so we could easily plan a group, to go up and talk to them about that or write letters or whatever. Um, I don't know if he's involved in any railroad legislation, but I know he'd be interested in it. And then my question to you to all of you is what about our state reps? What about Michelle Hinchey and Sarah Hannah Shrestha? Because I saw Sarah Hannah last night and she was really interested because the train goes through Port Ewan as well.
Yep.
And so yeah, and we have good relationships with all of these with all of our reps. We've got them. We got them elected. They can at least pay attention to us. So yeah, talk to me about state level versus federal in terms
Yes.
of
Rebecca, cue the next slide.
okay.
Perfect.
I was prescient, huh?
Yeah. So, understanding federal preemption. So, under this 49 code, states can adopt their own safety laws if they meet three specific conditions. So, this is a state's legal leverage point. The three conditions are one, the law is necessary to eliminate or reduce an essentially local safety or security hazard. Two, I'll give you an example of that in a minute. Two, that it is not incompatible with federal regulation. And three, it does not unreasonably burden interstate commerce. Now, a lot of this is up to interpretation, and sometimes it's really difficult, in fact, exclusively difficult, to prove the existence of a local safety hazard. One of the good examples that I always like to give is the state of Pennsylvania. God love Pennsylvania. When they challenged the sanitary conditions and required locomotives to have toilets and wash areas. So prior to that, they did not. And so it created a sanitary issue where folks who were on the train, running the train, were using the bathroom in buckets or just going off of the side of the train. So the court upheld this state condition, finding the state's interest in the health and safety of its resident railroad workers to be pretty substantial. So that burden on interstate commerce was also deemed to be reasonable. And does anybody want to guess what year this locomotive cab sanitation standards became finalized? What year do you think that was?
2013.
Yeah, 2011.
2023.
Oh, you guys have no faith. It was it was in 2002, which I was in high school in 2002. So I feel like that's still not quite as recent as I'd like it to be, but the point is it was recent. It was in our lifetime that were people who were running the train would go, 8, 12, 16 hours without a toilet. Um, so that's a good example of how a state passed a law. Let's go to the next slide for New York State stuff. So these are some of the legislative trends. There are more bills out there that I could fit on the slide, but these are the ones that I wanted to just quickly touch on. So some of the key safety mandates that your legislators are looking at is being able to notify state emergency agencies of the hazardous materials that are running through communities. I think this is a good piece of legislation for a lot of reasons. It says it's active, it's not really moving, which is unfortunate. It's really just a notification. I do think that this is federally preempted. I don't think this will go anywhere, unfortunately. The second one is also a great one that is a hot topic, train length. There has not been, I don't want to say there hasn't been, but there hasn't been a good court ruling on train length. Whether or not it is considered operations, so the train operations. Um, I think that this is also blocked crossings is generally not accepted in court. It's usually dismissed. Um, the other one that has been vetoed was vetoed by the governor about the two-person crews. The two-person crew legislation is currently at the federal level, though. That was one of the provisions that was put in the Surface Transportation Board budget bill. There are a lot of bills that are good bills, and there are bills that are good bills that aren't going to pass. I think what's really important about rail safety bills in any state is when you see something and it seems good, just talk to that sponsor about it. Like, do they know about federal preemption? Because oftentimes they don't. But my point in saying all of this is that even if it is federally preempted, if we have 17 states working to pass train length bills that want to prevent exceeding 8,500 feet, then to me, that feels like a case where maybe someone at the federal level would pay attention to that and we could get that then passed at the federal level. The reason that all trains in America now have toilets is because of this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because they passed that. The FRA took initiative and said, okay, yeah, maybe we should provide them with some relief and a place to wash their hands. So I think when our states put forth legislation, even if it is federally preempted, I think we should still work to pass that because there are other states, specifically on train length right now, that are working for that 8,500 feet standard. Yes.
Do you think that Skoufis and Hinchy, I mean, do you know if they're helping each other out with those bills? They're two of our state senators in Ulster County. And I just wonder if they're working together at all on that.
That's a good question. I have not met with either of them. I did meet with Schumer's office a couple weeks ago. Um, it
Well,
wasn't,
Schumer is federal, but
yeah,
Hinchy and
well, New
Skoufis are
York. But
state. Yeah.
the
But you know
other,
what? That would be an easy question to reach out to Morgan
Yeah. Okay.
House and I
Yeah.
think and ask, now that we are aware of this,
Yes.
we can reach out and ask what's happening and how we can support it.
Yep. And get them to support each other.
And how can they work together if they're not already?
Right.
And I'm going to raise something in a really quickly, which is that, I can't share it because my screen is full, but the Hudson 7, the Drinking Water Intermunicipal Council that drinks from the Hudson is um, currently in conversation with CSX because of the concerns of trail derailments and spills in the river. And we know that there's no recovery when something like that would happen because of it being a tidal river and depending on what it is, likely wouldn't be recovered. And so we want to, and so at any rate, the Hudson 7 has been working and talking about the CSX bridges that are all in different disrepair or weakened and speaking with Pat Ryan. And I think that, if there's community interest in Kingston, um, that's one place that we could plug into because they're moving the needle um, because of drinking water and the Hudson River. But that's running also through, you mentioned Port Ewan, they drink from the river, um, etc. So I think that there might be some really good opportunities for us. And this is a great starting point. We're learning about this through Jess, and we'll discuss some next steps when we get through this. But I just wanted to at least raise it. And if you look at hudson7.org, there's a report right in the heading there, and there's a whole section on what they've been doing with CSX right there. I'm pretty sure. So, so there's some history, some institutional memory that we can learn from. So I'll pause again.
thanks for that. Yeah, like I said, there are more pieces of legislation that are on the table right now, than what's on this slide. So I would, encourage you if you're interested in that to look into that. Again, a lot of them are going to be federally preempted. I still think that it's really important to continue to press at the state level and to try to pass these. The only way that we can, make these major adjustments in rail safety is one, by getting our court date from the bill that we worked so hard to pass and getting the attention of the folks at the federal level. I do try to go every year, at least once or twice a year. Again, Rail Watch is not a lobbying organization, but I think that your story is your power. And so if you have a story, like for example, your situation where you're, living next to this rickety rail line and you have concerns, I think that, folks in Washington want to hear things like that because they mostly sit in their office and hear from rail lobbyists and petrochemical lobbyists. So it would be a breath of fresh air for someone from Kingston to go in, really.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but if there was a fire and it fell off,
Right.
no fire truck could get up.
No.
And we could not get out. I mean,
Right.
we could
Well-
probably get out, but like,
Well, and talking about the Hudson River and the water.
And we're the Rondout.
If
Yeah.
something goes into the water by us, which is the Rondout Creek, it flows into the Hudson River. So the
Yeah.
Hudson Seven are going to be, as well as many, many other people are going to be affected by that as well.
Yeah.
So
And one last data point, there was
Yeah.
a spill drill up here, in the Kingston hub area, which I think was the first of its kind. I think they usually are doing these spill drills down in the bay, rather down in the harbor. So yeah, the wheels are turning, and I also think your to Amy, your or whoever was just speaking on Peter's Zoom, the fact that we may or may not have an emergency prepared or an emergency management plan as it pertains to trains is something else altogether really striking. So we really need to get to the bottom of that because I mean that I almost can't imagine that that's correct, but I can't find it on our website, which doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And Suzanne Cahill is here is telling us she's not aware of it. So that right there is something that would be really important for us to like zoom in and center in on to see where we even stand with all of that and how it's coordinated with the county.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
That's the one that I find that most communities don't have, but they are legally entitled to, is an emergency plan that includes train derailment, disaster, chemical disaster mitigation. Okay, so next slide. This also talks a little bit about the two key federal statutes, and then I'll move on into what you can do. I think it'll be a good conversation continuation. So under the current federal legislation, there's two big ones that are on the table. The ICCTA, which I talked with you a little bit about from 1995. So this grants the not the Surface Transportation Board, the federal. Oh, yes, the Surface Transportation Board. Sorry, the next one is the Federal Rail. I'm getting confused. So this grants the Surface Transportation Board exclusive jurisdiction over basically anything that has to do with rail economy. So this is their practices, their routes, their services. So this is pretty significant. And then the FRSA, which is the Federal Rail Administration, basically has full jurisdiction over safety that has to do with train operations. So the problem with the FRA doing that, and I have friends at the FRA, I have friends who worked formerly at the FRA. It's not about the people, it's about the way that the agency is run. So I want to be really clear about that. They are really not great at enforcing. The phrase that resonates with me the most about my community is when Jennifer Homendy from the National Transportation Board stood up on the stage in my high school and said that the train derailment in East Palestine was 100% preventable. That the spill, the purposeful vent and burn of the vinyl chloride, where they blew holes in 5 tank cars of vinyl chloride, drained it into a ditch, and lit it on fire a couple days after the derailment, was not necessary. What that means is that under the current laws that we have, it was preventable. So again, the problem isn't necessarily that the laws don't work for us, it's that we are not enforcing them. And by we, I mean the FRA, I mean the federal government. And a lot of times what you'll hear is, we're understaffed, we don't have enough funding. bullpucky. I don't buy it because I think that unfortunately, they do not work in public interest. And that's something that states and grassroots localities, that's what your story you can activate to create change. Um, so anyways, those are the two big guys at the federal level that courts generally like to refer to when they are dismissing state and local legislation that has passed. Okay, next slide. So what you can do, so I have been actively working campaigns. I worked 12 local campaigns when I worked at Beyond Plastics and two national campaigns. Like I said, I worked in 19 communities over 11 states and Canada when I first started this. So campaign work is generally something that I know a lot about, and I'm happy to be a resource for you. Your biggest asset is building your community coalition, uniting parents, schools, fire departments, first responders, neighborhoods in order to bring these issues into the light, to shine a spotlight on them. Engaging media is another tactic that I use a lot. I mentioned that I write some opinion editorials. My most recent one was published in The Hill, which is something that folks in Washington, D.C. and Congress read a lot. So being able to identify, the outlets that are most accessible to the decision makers. So going on Facebook and writing a rant about how you're pissed off about this railroad crossing being blocked is probably not going to do very much. But you could start a Facebook group to collect data in your community and to provide support so that when it comes time to present to your community decision makers or your state community decision makers, you'll have all of that information available. So it's really important to utilize media in a way that is effective, that you have a goal in mind. I mean, also, you can just vent on Facebook if you really want to. But if you're looking for solutions, that would be what I would suggest. And then policy levers. I have worked in communities where we have not necessarily created new legislation, but used existing legislation to prevent chemicals from going into certain spaces on trains, such as zoning laws. We think a lot about like the different legislation in cities versus townships versus counties. I mean, there's a lot of different types of political pressure and common sense laws that we already have in place that we can utilize for rail safety to keep our communities safer. Specifically, the laws that require us to have emergency management plans. Let's go ahead to the next slide for the sake of time. So these are some really incredible public interest rail safety partners that I work with. And I meant to put the hyperlinks into this slide and I did not, and I apologize for that. But obviously, you know RailWatch now, and you can message me, email me, or get a hold of Rebecca. Public Rail Now is a fantastic organization. They are working on nationalizing the rail system. Solutionary Rail, also another great organization that wants to electrify the rail system. East Yard is primarily working on communities with rail yards and trying to mitigate pollution. When you have 20, 50, 100 diesel engines running at the same time next to a community, that gets to be pretty burdensome on your respiratory system. So they fight against emissions. Breathe Project is out of Pennsylvania. I work with them pretty commonly too, specifically on hazardous materials transport as well as air quality. And then you guys have Riverkeeper. And I think from what I read online, maybe someone knows more than I do. They do monitor the CSX.
Yes.
Okay. Is anybody here from there or know
No,
somebody?
but I have friends who were all involved in the whole bomb train thing a couple of years ago. It was a big deal for a while. Rebecca probably knows even more about it than me, but
I
yeah.
worked at Hudson River Keeper for 7 years. So yes, and to the bomb trains, yes, they did a lot of work on that, and they're partners in the as part of the Hudson Seven and a big part of the CSX conversation that's underway. Dan Shapley is a great resource at Riverkeeper for that.
Yeah, I think John Bowmaster from Ocean 8 Films has
Yeah.
a good short film about that.
Yeah, Riverkeeper commissioned those films.
Ah, okay. See, everyone's connected. I love that.
Mhm.
Um, okay, cool. And then that's sort of the end. You can go to the next slide. I want to take a minute before we dive into more questions, and thank Rebecca for and KingstonCitizens.org for hosting Rail Watch today. The QR code would take you to a donation page. Rail Watch is fiscally sponsored by Nonprofit Partners, which is a 501(c)(3) organization. I will drop that homepage in there. And they're a really great partner. They do support me a lot in grant writing and being able to sort of navigate what funders want in terms of being able to get the organization funded. So they're very great. They do take 5% off the top of every donation, just for full transparency. But that's pretty low and compared to the support that they have provided me over the past few months. So
Thank you so much, Jess. And I realize we didn't really advertise an end time, but it is 7 o'clock, and I think it would be great if you all had a little, if you have questions and you can stay on, we can go to maybe 7:15 or 7:20. Jess, if you have that time, just to get to some more questions. And I'm just going to kick it off. And if you can't, you can drop off and you'll get a copy of the video. But I don't want to um, keep you, Jess, over more time than we discussed. So, do you know of any examples? So, uh, I assume that what tr the trains used to transport when they began and where we are now are not the same. And so, but our trains still run through our cities. It literally runs through the heart of our city. Um, do you have any examples or know of any communities that successfully were able to work to get the train to bypass their community? Um, which is a heavy lift, but I'm curious what your knowledge is on anything like that.
there are advocacy groups that work to do that. I am not aware of any that have been successful. BNSF Advocates is in Canada. BNSF.
Be great to get that resource, just so we can do a little poking around and see what they do and what's possible. Thank you. That's great.
They were working to relocate. But in the same vein of, the things that are on rail is different than what it was 10 years ago. I want to bring to your attention to why that's really important. Because there are, two things happening at the federal level right now that pertain to chemicals, that really would increase the risk of rail, freight line communities. The first one is chemical recycling. So this is a plastic industry solution. It's not really a solution to the plastic problem that we have. It's basically burning plastic. And what happens when you take the 16,000 plus chemicals that are used to make plastic and you put them in a pot and you light them on fire, or not fire, but you burn them, you high heat chemicals. It creates a lot of other toxic chemicals and byproducts. And those chemicals get transported sometimes by train. The reason I bring that up is because there's so many new chemicals that are constantly being made, And there's a federal bedrock law that is under attack called the Toxic Substance Control Act. That was primarily why I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago. The Toxic Substance Control Act is a way that um, the Environmental Protection Agency, can assess both new and existing chemicals. So without this law, and they assess it in the context of human health. They don't look at corporate profits. They look at what happens when this chemical comes in contact with a pregnant person or an elderly person or someone who's chronically ill. They assess it in the context of, exposure. And they also are required to look at transportation of the chemical. So the Toxic Substance Control Act is currently under attack. There is a bill to dismantle this law. And with the push for chemical recycling, the burning of plastic, the creation of all these new chemicals, it just creates additional hazards for communities that are in rail spaces.
So that's interesting because rather than a precautionary principle, right?
Yeah.
Like we have TSCA, Toxic Substance Control Act, but it's more of a reactive law is what I've learned. And it's reactive post-market. So it still looks at harms after they've occurred rather than preventing them. And my understanding of Tosca is that it's an industry
Mm,
based, it was developed by industry. And I have some information on that. And it doesn't mean it's not a good thing to have it in place because it is really one of the only things we do have. But I I just wondered what your thoughts were about that in terms of its history, how it was created, who created it, and this is still problem that there is really nothing stopping a company from creating chemicals at all. There's nothing, even Tosca, because
yeah.
as I said, it's reactive.
So, TSCA, the Toxic Substance Control Act, the original one from the 70s, was not great for public interest. It's only been the Lautenberg Act, which was initiated in 2016. Those amendments, were essentially what put it back into public interest. So the Toxic Substance Control Act initially was just a way for the government to keep tabs on the new chemicals that were being made. And with the 2016 amendments, which are the amendments that are under attack, those are the ones that help identify the risks to human health without considering corporate profits. So,
Right.
and
But
you're right.
after the fact, still we're still in this. I don't think the public really understands that there is really, it's not like the FDA. There's nothing stopping them from, in the same way that prescription drugs has a rigorous process to go through. Chemicals companies or companies making these chemicals, everyone that's regulated, there's a new one. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right. And just to differentiate between the Toxic Substance Control Act and the FDA, so thinking about it in terms of the FDA is who assesses the chemicals we put in our bodies or on our bodies, and the Toxic Substance Control Act doesn't do in our bodies or on our
no,
bodies.
but I just mean I think that it would be logical that the FDA is something we're all familiar with, and we would assume that something like that exists to,
Yeah.
to
For the
regulate
other chemicals, yeah.
chemicals, and there isn't. So I wonder if there are other questions.
Could
Um,
I, could
folks,
I,
yeah,
yeah, I'm
Will,
Will
go ahead,
Nixon again.
please. Yep.
You brought up bomb trains. As I understand it, those were bringing fracked oil from or gas from the Dakotas, and they were running them through here. And they were particularly volatile, and there were some horrific explosions of those trains. I don't think those are running anymore. They built pipelines rather than putting it on trains. And also, you had mentioned the vinyl chloride. I'm wondering what is running through Kingston. How explosive is it, and what really is dangerous, and what isn't? Because I see those black cars every day.
So,
Yeah,
can I just jump in and say one quick thing? John
Please.
Bowermaster that Jess mentioned earlier, his one of his colleagues, I can't remember his last name. First name is Chris, actually did what Jess suggested. He lived over on Broadway, right nearby the tracks on Greenkill, and he set
Mhm.
up a film and filmed the the trains going by to try to catch the the placards to see what was
Yeah.
in. I wonder if reaching out to him would be a good idea just to find out whatever happened to that project, Will. Um,
Mhm.
just to see because so I'll pause there because Jess, you also addressed that a little earlier about how do we know what's in these trains? Is there a list? Is there does it vary? Does the transport change on a regular basis, on a weekly basis? So it isn't always the same thing. So
Also, let me add that the point about Jess made about the vinyl chloride, they didn't need to do East Palestine what they did. How dangerous! I know the bomb chains, they were dangerous because they were volatile and explosive, but our other things might not be so dangerous. I'm just wondering what the dangers are. What's running through and how dangerous are they really, or how dangerous do they need to be?
pretty toxic stuff.
Yeah.
A vinyl chloride is a known carcinogen, meaning exposure at certain levels causes cancer, not just that it's linked. Um,
Yeah.
Benzene is another one that causes cancer. So, I mean, we're talking about like pretty significant chemicals in very, very large quantities. Chlorine gas is another one that is a World War I chemical agent. Not the chlorine that you put in your pool, although that's nasty stuff too. This
Right.
is, if a chlorine tank car were to leak or explode, the fatalities would be massive, and pretty immediate. There
Mhm.
was a leak, I think, in West Virginia. I'm gonna blank on the year, but I want to say 2016, where, there were quite a few fatalities. Um, but I'm trying to find, Frack Tracker Alliance is another community group that I work with a lot, and they have some maps of the rail system and where they travel through towns that they travel through and primary corridors. So I'm trying to find that now, but maybe I'll get that over to Rebecca for you guys to have.
Mhm.
thanks, Will. Teddy, we haven't heard from you. If you have a question, maybe we'll just take a couple of more before we let Jess go for the night. And maybe we can talk about some next steps actually before you do for us here as follow-up.
Any fast thoughts about like connectivity and trains? What is there anything that could be done to start to require trains to make overpasses for maybe for pedestrians at the very least, but maybe even so that emergency vehicles can get through? Anything from that end?
So, have you looked into Chrissy grants?
No, I've not heard of that.
So CRISI, those would be the primary federal grants that communities can apply for grade separation, which means changing the grade. So like building a bridge that would go over.
Yeah.
Um, that's the only resource that I would have for that. I know other communities have tried to create detours in other ways, like signage. But I think, ultimately, usually the great separation, that's what they're trying to do in Houston right now, because I don't know if you recall a couple years ago, a student died trying to get to school because they were going through the train. And so it created quite a stir. But they are working on grade separation 2 years later, because of that incident. So it's terrible that we have to be reactive, Rebecca, like you were saying. Like we have so many opportunities to be preventative. There are dozens of recommendations from the National Transportation Safety Board, which is the investigative agency for surface transportation accidents. They do rail, highway, they do air, boat. Um, they have dozens of recommendations, repeated recommendations for rail safety. Um, so yeah, but grade separation projects they're hard to fund generally, but certainly if you can do that, I would recommend that. But the Chrissy, yeah, thank you for that.
We've got one that's was put out to RFP to try to start behind the Y, but is there just no hope of getting CSX to ever pay for it themselves because they're infringing upon our connectivity?
I always have hope, um, even in my darkest moments. I think so I'll give you an example of something in New York. I can't remember the name of the place right now, but they did a community petition to Norfolk Southern to fill potholes on the road where the tracks are. And Norfolk Southern did pay the community to fill the potholes. I know that seems minor, but my point in saying that is that it is possible. And I think with community pressure specifically from local government entities and local agencies, you can request repeatedly. And I think you should use media to your advantage to do that. Take the incidents, the accidents that have already happened, not just in your community, but in other communities as examples, and just apply the pressure. Apply it firmly and fiercely. I'm happy to, attend a hearing or, provide any context for that moving forward. But yeah, I think it's grassroots to global. We have to keep applying that grassroots pressure.
Thank you.
I just dropped the Hudson Sevens letter and I'll stop, but I think it's interesting because they outline, this was their letter to CSX. They outline their concerns, their immediate concerns, and it led to a series of meetings that are still ongoing. All of them are recorded and they're available to watch for the public. So, Amy, I'm interested for you to see that, especially in with your concept of bringing together and reaching out to our state and federal reps because they're aware, and you can
Right,
see they're all copied here. So they're engaged and aware and supportive. It's just a matter of figuring out how to pull it all together.
right, right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, us getting educated and I think building the community, like, you know, is really important. And God knows that my street, DeWitt, we've got, a lot of people in the street. They're not all necessarily going to be doing
Well,
action, but
Right.
they all would agree with us. They've all complained about their fears of the train, falling off the track and the noise and all of that.
well, at the very least, if we don't have a plan,
Yeah.
and
That's yeah.
I think we'll leave with that tonight because what's going to happen next is you're going to get all of these materials and resources and anything else that Jess might think of after our conversation that could be helpful. And I really think that we need to ask the city for a really clear, detailed what is available, what work have we done, when did
Yeah.
we do it, what's missing, and how does it connect to the county. So to me, that's hope, that's positive, that's productive, and reaching out to our senators who are working on legislation right now. I mean, tonight learning about the length of these trains, that's a 3 mile train. I mean, that's a problem. And it's good to know that Senator Hinchey is working on that. That's good.
And she'd be really happy to know that a whole bunch of us are supportive and are
Right.
gonna be back, can go up and talk or lobby or whatever we need to do. She'll be thrilled with that.
Yeah, it's excellent. So with that, Jess, do you have any closing thoughts before we let you go?
I don't think so. This has been such a great conversation, and I'm appalled at all of the things that you guys are managing in terms of rail safety. And hopefully after these discussions, you'll feel more empowered. That is always the goal of Rail Watch, is to empower communities to take their rail safety concerns and turn them into action. And I feel like we did that tonight. So thank you so much for your interaction, for your attention, for your inquisitiveness, and I'm so excited to check back in, maybe here in a couple months or maybe a year, and see where this group goes.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. And thanks to you all for coming. Nice to see you.
And Rebecca will be in touch.
That sounds great. All
Okay.
right. Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.